I'm so glad to have an opportunity to share with you. I'm guessing if you're watching this part of the video that your life has been touched by suicide. I won't tell you that I know exactly how you feel, and I won't tell you that you have my sympathies or my condolences to you or anything like that. For the most part, those are just hollow words, and they don't really seem to help, at least not in my experience. I would just like to take a few moments to share with you the feelings and emotions that I went through following my brother Aaron's suicide. The night it happened, I was sitting in my apartment, I was watching television, I was enjoying the last of the Memorial Day weekend. I was having a good time. The phone rang, and from the tone in my dad's voice I could tell that something was seriously wrong. My father told me that my brother Aaron was dead and that they had found him dangling from an extension cord in a warehouse where he lived. The warehouse was on the property where the gay bar was at Aaron worked. After I heard the news, I was grief-stricken. I just didn't know what to do. My father was asking me if I would consider coming to help console my mother, and I told my dad at first, "Dad, I'm sorry, I just don't know." I told my dad, "I tell you what I'll do. I'll do the best that I can here, and after I have some time alone to myself, because I need some, I'll come and see Mom." After I hung up the phone with my father, I fell to my face on the floor for an hour, and I just grieved before the Lord, just asking the Lord why this happened. Just telling the Lord, I just couldn't believe what had happened. I was in shock. I really believed that my brother was going to come home, and I was actually eager and excited to wait for his return. But that's not what happened. After I spent an hour or so grieving by myself, I was barely able to get into my car and drive over to see my parents. Fortunately, my parents only lived about 20 to 25 minutes from where I lived at the time. I went into my parents' home. I opened the door, and I saw my mom in the living room with some of her closest friends, and she was just grieving. She was sobbing, and it was just tearing me up inside. Just seeing my mother grieving made the pain even more intense, and it just hurt more for me. Because not only was I grieving for myself, I was grieving for her too. And I could just feel and sense her pain. After my mom had a couple minutes to console herself, she was able to tell me what they had found out from the police and what had happened. We had thought that Aaron had been involved in doing drugs and possibly even selling drugs for a while. So my first reaction was to be angry, figuring that Aaron had not taken his own life, and that someone had coerced Aaron into doing it, or that someone had drugged Aaron and had hung him. But that we would later learn that wasn't the case. The autopsy report that we received several weeks later showed that Aaron did not have any narcotics in his system, so Aaron wasn't on drugs. Aaron hadn't been drugged by anyone or anything at the time. This realization, of course, didn't make the pain seem any less, and it didn't help lessen the emotional distress that me and my family felt. We had to wait a couple days for Aaron's body to come up from South Carolina before we could actually have the viewing and the funeral. I saw and watched in pain as my parents had to make my brother's funeral arrangements. The most painful part of the process for them was they had to go shopping in a store, and they had to pick out a suit and tie to clothe my brother Aaron in for the viewing and the funeral. When I got to the viewing, we got there a little bit early, and I just broke down sobbing and crying because I looked and I saw my brother's lifeless body. I saw the marks around his neck where he hung himself. I saw him sitting there, and my parents had placed his Bible that Aaron had had since he was a child. I had to see there and see my brother that way. It was just hard, it was just horrible, it was painful for me. By the time the actual viewing had started, I was just in so much pain emotionally. I felt like someone had hit me in the stomach. I felt like I was just going to throw up. I couldn't grieve anymore. I couldn't feel anything. It was just horrible. So I stood there, and as I was in the receiving line, of course, for the viewing, and watching Aaron's family and his friends and people that cared about him walking through the line and looking at Aaron's body. And I just couldn't deal with it. I sat there and watched it happen. It was almost like I was watching a bad dream, and I just felt convinced that if I waited long enough that I was going to wake up from it, and it was just going to be a bad dream and nothing more. But it wasn't. It wasn't a bad dream. It was really happening. After the viewing, of course, came the big day of the funeral. I was dealing with it a little bit better, though I was still emotionally numb at the time. I had to sit there and to listen as they talked about my brother, and I had them read a passage from Revelation, which I was hoping would give some comfort. And the passage in Revelation I had them read talked about how, and he shall wipe away every tear from their eyes, and how that death and Hades would be swallowed up, and that there would be no more sickness, no more death, no more pain, no more grief, no more sorrow, after the Lord creates a new heaven and a new earth. And with that, I hope I tried to solace myself, because what had happened. Following the funeral, our church had a Saturday night service, and my parents wanted me to go home to be with them, but an elder from a church had come and counseled us before the viewing and the funeral, and had told us that the only way we were going to get through it is if we made sure that we worshiped the Lord. And even though it was the hardest thing for us to do, that we needed to worship and to praise the Lord, and to shift our focus and our attention off of our sorrow and our grief that we felt, and to see the Lord for who He was, and to worship God, and to realize that God was still God and that He was still in control. So to that end, I went to the service that night. When the worship started, I just about lost it. I was sobbing so bad I could barely get the words of the song out. One of the songs we were singing was talking about casting down our sorrows, casting down our pain, and then laying them down for the glory of the Lord. And I just couldn't get the words out. Just couldn't praise the Lord that night. I just couldn't do it.